All right, it's 7:01 and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I want to first and foremost thank you all for joining our Thursday, August 13th, Ask Me Anything with Aspen Dental with our featured panelist, Dr. Brandon Meckleberg. He's going to introduce himself in a while and then it's going to be a free-for-all. A few things. I want to really thank the NYU student government for helping out with getting the word out. I know school's not in session, so it's a huge ask for you to jump on, and I really appreciate it. Again, tonight it's called Ask Me Anything. We have a fantastic resource here for you in Dr. Meckleberg, and we call it Ask Me Anything because we want the audience, the attendees, to drive the content. Whatever you all want the answers to, we're here to provide them for. Okay, so as I said in a couple emails to you guys, we will be doing a raffle towards the end. You do have to stay on the entire time to be eligible, but we're raffling off 2 gift cards, one Amazon gift card for $25 and another one for $75, so that will add a little excitement towards the end. Without further ado, I would love to allow Dr. Brandon Meckleberg to take the floor and introduce himself. And first and foremost, thank you very much, Doc, for spending your evening with us. We really appreciate it, and I know the attendees do too. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Jeff. Well, I want to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Brandon Meckleberg. I live here in Tallahassee, Florida. I am originally from Wisconsin, so I did my dental school education at Marquette University up in Milwaukee, and somehow found my way to North Florida. A little bit of my background story. I went to undergrad at University of Chicago, studied economics, loved the business side of things, but also had a passion for something in the healthcare field. Decided to go to dental school and absolutely loved it. Enjoyed my time at Marquette. Ended up moving back to Chicago to practice for a short while in private practice. Knew Jeff from beforehand, so we had a good relationship. And I just found that when I was in private practice, it just wasn't exactly what I saw myself doing long term. And I contacted Jeff, and long story short, ended up working for Aspen for a short while in the Chicagoland area. Eventually made my way down to Florida, and now have expanded. I own practices throughout Tallahassee, Panama City Beach, which is all in North Florida. So it's been a little bit of a journey, but everything happened very quickly. For me, I graduated in 2017. I bought my first practice in May of 2018, and now I'm opening practices 3 and 4 in the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021. So incredible opportunities have arisen, and it's been an absolute blessing. Really enjoyed working with Aspen, and it's given me such growth potential and allowed me to really pursue my passions both in dentistry and then also outside of dentistry in a few different ways. So. Jeff, you're muted, my man.
I do that a lot. Thank you for that. That's a great introduction, Dr. Meckleberg. And he's being a little modest. He was actually one of the very quickest dentists that we've hired to own an office, and also one of the youngest. So congratulations on there. So he has a lot to speak about as it relates to the career path at Aspen Dental. So first and foremost, I'll start us off. There's a few questions coming in. Keep them coming. Doc, so you talked a little bit about how you joined Aspen Dental. Talk a little bit more about how you ended up in Florida after just spending a few weeks or a few months in the Chicagoland area.
Yeah. Well, initially I had dreams of living in Chicago, and I always wanted to be in the big city. And like I said, I went to undergrad there, and I had a lot of close friends in that Chicagoland area. I started working in the Champaign office, which was actually quite a bit south of Chicago. And I didn't necessarily mind the commute for a short while, but the opportunity had kind of popped up meeting, her name's Lori Deanna, who is one of the vice presidents for the company, and met her at this retreat that we had that all the doctors go to. Essentially every year, all the doctors go to this. It's called the Leadership Retreat. And we all get together, bounce ideas off each other, have really cool CEs, performances by artists. I think one year we had DJ Khaled. They'll have big name MCs like Nick Cannon. It's a ton of fun. And every year it's in a different location. So last year, I believe it was in Miami. The year before was in Chicago. The year before that was in Arizona and Scottsdale. So they pick great cities to go to, and it's a great experience because you get to meet dentists from across the country. Not just owners go. A lot of times, actually, managing clinical directors will go as well. So it's a great experience. You get to meet people all over the place. And if any of you, honestly, are involved with ASDA, I compare it very much to ASDA. I loved ASDA. I was all about it in dental school. And this was a super, super similar situation. A lot of my friends that are in Aspen with me that were in ASDA as well throughout the country, we joke about it, but we say it's almost like the grown-up version of ASDA because of the fact that we all get together yearly. I mean, some of us get together even more than that if we're in a region that's close to each other. But kind of going full circle, how I ended up in Florida. So there was an opportunity in an area that was underserved. It had an incredible amount of patients, but it didn't have the right culture in the offices. The offices were previously open. There were currently dentists in the practices. There was just issues with management. There was issues with how the offices were run. So I really wanted to be someone that had that opportunity to grab the bull by the horns, move somewhere different, and try to rebuild these offices with my mentality, with the help of Aspen really partnering with me on this. And so I moved across the country to an area that I thought I could see myself possibly long-term in Florida. And the rest is history. We took over the practice in what would have been, I moved here in September of 2017. So I graduated in May. I worked in private practice right after I graduated up until about the August timeframe for just a few months. And then September was kind of the month when I started with Aspen and ended up in Chicago for that while, and then moved down to Florida. Fell in love with it, took over this practice, built it back up. And within a few months, we had the office in a good position that I think was a lot more stable, was able to coach the team. It was not easy by any means. We had to let go of the majority of the staff, and that was something that was very difficult jumping into, especially out of school. In school, we don't get a whole lot of business experience or management experience. We get the dental side, which is what you want to have. That's the most important part. But the real world side of it is we have to be able to know how to hire, how to fire, how to manage a team, how to build the camaraderie in an office, how to, motivate others in your office and be a leader. And those are all things that Aspen helped me to do, and also gave me mentorship with other owners that had done it well before I had and are uber more successful than I am, that really showed me the way. So I was able to kind of hit the ground running as I got into Florida. We took over this practice. I bought the practice about 6 months after I moved down. And then gradually after this practice had some success, Aspen reached out about purchasing more offices that were sort of in similar situations where they weren't owned by a specific doctor yet. And we're looking for a POP, as we call it, or an owner to come in to kind of add their flavor or their style to the office and purchase the office and help to rebuild and really get it running at a high rate. So,
Dr. Meckleberg, thank you for that. There's a couple more questions on ownership, but I want to kind of skip over and kind of put those aside for a moment. There's two questions. One is, what was a couple of your biggest challenges coming out of school and just being an associate or a lead dentist in an office? And I know you hit on a little bit, but can you talk a little bit more about how you were mentored to get to where you were?
Mm-hmm. So let's start with the first and some of the hiccups. Coming out of school, like I was talking about before, like you definitely have the clinical skills and experience. And one of the hardest things for me was diving in. And one of the biggest words of advice that I have to any doctor coming out of dental school is don't be afraid to dive in. Don't be afraid to push yourself, especially in the opportunity that I was afforded with working with Aspen. Is they give you a training period. They give you a time when you can really get comfortable with being in an office setting and seeing patients on the regular, and not just, in dental school, we see what, 2, maybe 3 patients a day. You have as much time as you want. You also have a bunch of faculty over your shoulder looking at everything you're doing in every single step. I tell you, one of the scariest things is when you get out in the real world and you're doing that crown prep and you're looking around like, okay, are the margins good? Is everything all right? Can I move forward? And there's no one to check. Like, you're gung ho. All right, let's go for it. So that was, to me, one of the scariest things, but also one of the things that I found enjoyable. You kind of hit that point where you're like, all right, I made it. I'm a doctor now. I can do this. Like, let's go. And so don't be afraid when you come out to push yourself, and don't be afraid to, especially if you're in a setting with other dentists in the office with you, they're there to help you. They're there to build you up. If you're an associate or even a lead dentist coming into an office, there are other clinicians most likely in that office. And so even if they're not in that office with you, there's mentors in other offices that are willing to help and want to help you grow. I know with every one of my associates that I bring on for my offices, I spend at least bare minimum one-on-one the first 4 to 8 weeks together. One-on-one, and what I mean by that is the first week they shadow. They shadow everything that I do from start to finish. I run a full schedule for that week. The second, third week, I usually am kind of hand in hand with them. So they're doing the procedures, I'm assisting them. And then 4th week to that 8th week period, depending on how long the DDP or the doctor development program goes for, it's a little bit different with every doctor that I bring on, and any owner out there is going to be a little bit different with it as well. But I prefer to be very hands-on with those doctors. So I'll let them run free and do their thing for those weeks. And I'm there to kind of come in and check on and say, hey, how can I help? What can I do? What do you need? What do you need here? X, Y, and Z. But also be a resource to provide, ways to make things more efficient, what materials to use, troubleshooting. When something goes wrong and you're doing a surgical extraction for the first time on your own and you're trying to take out a partial bony tooth and you're like, oh my gosh, I got a root that broke off. What do I do? Instruments do I use? I haven't ever learned this in school. Having a doctor there that can teach you that is super valuable, but it also, it's easing to the mind to know, okay, if I have the snag, I have somebody that can back me up. And then you can push yourself that much more. So you're going to make yourself that much better of a clinician if you have somebody that can support you and teach you these tactics. So that way, long term, you're going to get that down and you're going to be the one down the road that's teaching that to somebody else.
Awesome. We have a couple follow-up questions on that in particular. So first question is, so you hired a few associates, right? You've hired an NYU grad, haven't you?
Multiple, actually. Yes.
Okay.
And NYU has been very good to me. The doctors that I have from NYU are all stellar. You guys clinically are just crush it. I love it. Every one of my doctors that have come in, they hit the ground running. They have that mentality that they want to rock it. And my latest doctor I had come down, Dr. Cutroli, Joanna Cutroli. I don't know if any of you knew her. She graduated last year. Just amazing. She came down here and just soaked up everything that I have tried to teach her. And now she's well on her path to becoming an MCD in one of my practices. It's really neat to see this growth. And from my standpoint, I love mentorship. I love teaching as much as I can, even though there's much that I have to learn still within dentistry, as they call it, the practice of dentistry. No one's a perfectionist at it. Everyone has to practice at it. But the neat part about it is I can pass along everything that I've gone through and the mistakes that I've made, so I can prevent others from making those same mistakes. But the neat part about it too is that within a year, so she's been here, she started in what would have been last fall. So about a year now, now is comfortable doing full mouth extraction, is comfortable doing everything restorative. I can't think of anything she doesn't do restorative, restoring implants, even now, we went to an implant course together. Another thing that was really neat, ADMI offered, or Aspen Dental offered for owners to bring their doctors to Chicago to do implant training. So I brought all of my doctors from all of my offices. We all went to Chicago together and spent the weekend together. And we trained on not just implant restoration, but bone grafting, site preparation, anything along those lines that's going to allow you to have success with the restorative portion of implants. Now, is that to say that my docs aren't going to place implants? Oh, they definitely will. And that's the goal, is in order to place them, you got to be able to know how to restore them. So I went through that as well early on with the restorative portion. And now I place implants in my office, in my offices, I should say. I travel in between the offices placing them. And it's a ton of fun, because that day the doctors, all of my MCDs and associates look forward to, because that's the day that I block out the schedule for them, and it's just straight implants that day. So they can spend time one-on-one. Heck, they can go in and even, I mean, most of the time I'll do the majority of it and get them set up, but some of them even will place the implant in. Just having that experience and getting comfortable with it, especially early on in that first year or two out of dental school, just propels you. And I tell you, just that little bit, or that taste of, especially with implants or surgery or things that you don't get as much experience with in dental school, just makes it, you kind of get that itch. And the more and more you do it, the more and more you love it.
Doc, you're making me want to go back to school. So a couple questions. Let's take it back to first, Dr. Catroli. How did you meet her, and what was her interview process like?
Yeah. So I did a Vibe event. It was a smaller Vibe event up at NYU. We did it in New York City. And it was a great weekend event. Came up and presented on a panel. And I just kind of talked about my experience at the time. I think I had just took over my second practice. I talked about my experience and how I had moved and what had happened so fast, and how I'm looking to bring on other like-minded doctors that want to learn, want to grow, and really want to move up quickly and just soak everything up like sponges. And so Joanna and I think we briefly met, just kind of like in passing, like, hey, nice to meet you. And then she got connected with Jeff, actually, and a few others, and ended up reaching out to me. We interviewed her and knocked my socks off, thought she was awesome. Came down to Florida, did a full shadow day within the office. And that's one of the big things that I think is so important, is when you're in dental school, you hear so much negative about DSOs. So much. I was terrified of DSOs. I was like, there's no way I would ever do a DSO. And Jeff will attest to this. Literally for 4 years, when I went through dental school, we were friends. And I told him from day one, I was like, nope, not for me. Nope, not for me. And needless to say, full circle. But one of the things I would say that was really neat was we got her in the office. And that's something I think is super important for anybody that is coming out. Go shadow. See it, because it may not be for you. Honestly, there's a lot of people that this model is not for them, and it really is true. But for those of you that it is, and you want to grab the bull by the horns, you will excel and do better in this setting than you could anywhere else. And so that's one of the things that I would just definitely encourage you. Come into the office and see it, because that's what Dr. Catroli did. She came in, she saw it in the office. She saw what she liked, she saw what she didn't like, so on and so forth. We talked about it. And that same day I said, you know what, I think this would be a great fit if this is where you want to be. And I would love to mentor you. And sure enough, she's like, yep, I'm totally on board. Let's do it. So she moved from New York with her family down to Tallahassee, Florida. She's been my associate in my main practice in Tallahassee. And now as we grow and open new locations over the next few months, she'll be taking over one of my offices as the managing clinical director. So the growth path, whether it be slow, fast, I mean, for her, fairly quick, went from associate within, a year and a half, is at the managing clinical director role in an office that realistically is going to be in this area of Florida is going to be, it's going to have the backbone of the support from this area. It's going to have, I'll be there to support her through everything if she needs anything. And along with that, also knowing that we can do implants, we can do different things, and she'll have that experience in someone that's there to coach her through it.
That's
so
awesome.
I'm excited for her.
So Doc, you just answered two questions that came in a little earlier that I was going to circle back. One was, how is somebody working in your office is going to, how are you going to empower them to grow professionally? And I think you covered that. And another one was, how do you find the right fit? And I think you nailed that one pretty good. I think the only thing I would add is that, like, look, it doesn't matter. I know people are scared about the DSO and that kind of thing, but I think fit speaks to the people within an office. And you really hit the nail on the head when you talked about coming in, seeing the office, seeing how it operates, clicking, that kind of thing. So fantastic job there. So you talked about associate, Doc, and you talked about the MCD. There's a few people who are asking, what can an associate expect to make first year out of dental school? And then another person kind of asked, what's the difference between associate and a lead dentist or an MCD?
Yeah, so I'll go through both of those. So for the compensation piece, I can only speak to my offices. So every owner is different, and every owner pays their associates different. Now, when you're a doctor within Aspen, you work for the owner. You don't, like, Aspen is the partner, but when you're going to be paid directly from the owner. So they determine, and they work together with ADMI, or I refer to Aspen as ADMI. ADMI is Aspen Dental Management Incorporated. They work together to determine, what is a fair daily rate, and then also what percentages are assessed for the doctors that are working. Now, something I don't know if you guys are familiar with how the compensation plan works for Aspen, but that is one of the things that I think is the biggest strength of Aspen, one of the things that attracted me to it. And that is everything is team-based. It's not solo production, how much can you do with your own hands based. And the reason I like that is because when you build up your hygienist and build her schedule by getting great acceptance and talking about perio and periodontal disease and all things associated, when you build up your oral surgeon schedule and get cases accepted for wisdom teeth, all these different things factor in to your total compensation. So associates typically will be between the 8 to 10% of the net, the net revenue of the practice. So the neat part about that is that incorporates everything: endodontists, oral surgeons. What myself, when I come in and do implants, say I'm going into an office that I'm not the MCD and I'm not the associate, I will still go in and do implants in that office, and they will be the ones that benefit from that in their incentives. So it doesn't have to just be straight from your hands, which is kind of a great way to do it. And also, it's a team atmosphere. If one person wins, everybody wins. So associates-wise, for my associates, I would say it's a wide variety. I can't give like a certain set number, but I would say across the board, most offers are, what would you say, Jeff, like 600, 650 a day?
Yeah,
is that pretty standard?
Yeah, I'll help you out with that. So, he could only speak to his offices. I've worked all over the country, and, a lot of the incentive plans are the same as far as philosophy. The numbers do change a little bit. And a lot is due to patient count and stuff like that as well. And how well the office does getting their patients to say yes. But, kind of putting it in a nutshell is we pay our dentists through profit share. So they earn a % of profit share at the end of each month. Right? So that's what Dr. Meckleberg's talking about when he talks about everybody's contributing to the revenue, and then revenue minus expenses of profit, and that's how our doctors get paid. Our associates on average will make about 150 to 160, across the board in their first year, full year. And when you become an MCD, the average is about 230, but some of our MCDs across the country are making up near 400. So there is kind of a wide variance there. The great thing about our compensation plan too is it incentivizes you and the entire office to do well but every dentist, or most dentists, I should say, also have a daily guarantee. And that's anywhere between $550 and $700, depending on where the office is, et cetera. So that's kind of the compensation piece. There's also some questions here talking about, what are the benefit plans in addition to compensation? And I'll talk about like the main benefit plans. You get medical, you get dental, you get, malpractice insurance paid for, and you get 401k matching after, I think, 1 year. So all that stuff is great, and it's full corporate benefits. I think one of the biggest benefit that you get at Aspen Dental is CE. And I kind of want to have Dr. Meckleberg talk about CE because 2 people have asked about it. So Dr. Meckleberg, what does the CE program look like?
So I touched on a little bit of it with the implant courses that we did in Chicago. So that's a big one. There's courses throughout the year. There's Invisalign training. So essentially with Invisalign training, it's very similar to the implant training setup, where we traveled to Chicago, or we traveled to, in our case scenario, I believe we did ours in Orlando because it was closer in Florida, and a group of owners and their doctors all got together, and we had the head of the orthodontics department do presentations, bring in speakers. We had ortho 101 classes for all the dentists, but we also were able to bring our hygienists. We were able to bring our office managers so they can learn all the different pieces of Invisalign and why it's so important to these patients, and also how to get them to say yes to treatment and to understand why the treatment is so important. But CE-wise online, there is everything, anything you want. And the way that I best describe CE and how I tell my doctors is whatever you're passionate about, I want to put you in a situation where you can learn more of what you're passionate about. And if that doesn't align with what I'm passionate about, that's okay. For instance, in my offices, I don't do endo. I don't do any root canals. Now, can I do root canals? Sure. But I find that it's much more efficient to send them to an endodontist because they can do it in half the time that I can. So with that being said, oftentimes I've had docs that'll say, hey, I really want to learn to do molar endo. I really like endo. So I want to get them involved. And so I reach out to endodontists. I'll reach out to different CE brokers, whatever it is, to get them involved and allow them to learn to do that at an adequate and strong rate so they can feel comfortable with moving forward in that part of their career if that's something that they're passionate about.
Quick question coming in. I think it's fantastic. It's one of my passions with regards to Aspen Dental and what we do is what sort of outreach programs do you have? And I'm, can I take a moment here, Dr. Meckleberg?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So, we have a fantastic, team of people that really, work with learning and development. So we have a group of clinicians that work with learning and development to formulate our outreach program. We call it the Healthy Mouth Movement. It started actually, 6 years ago or so. And there's really 3 components of the Healthy Mouth Movement. Every year in June, except for this year because of COVID, offices close and do a day of service for veterans. I think nearly 500 offices in 2019 opened up and gave a free day of service for veterans. That's one leg of our community outreach. Another leg is we have a mouth mobile. We have a mobile unit that makes 40 plus stops a year and partners with VAs around the country. And we also treat veterans that way as well. And the final piece to that, well, I wouldn't say final, the third piece to that is that we have, an overseas program where we do community outreach. And, there's, I think, 2 a year up until now. And I think they want to expand to like 3 or 4 a year moving forward. So that's a big part of what we do, at Aspen Dental. And I know that's really important to many dental students. So Dr. Meckleberg, talk about your experiences with giving back.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I love is the exact thing that you talked about when we do essentially like our Veterans Day. It's a really unique experience. My family background is involved with the military. And so it's a unique experience that I can give back to the people that I respect the most. And so last year we do essentially a day where we'll come in. All my staff is volunteer that day, and including myself. We come in and do absolutely everything that we can for as many patients as we can see in that one day. So it's usually on a Saturday. We start at 8 in the morning and we time it to 1 or 2 o'clock. Honestly, I think most times we've done it, we're there until 5 or 6 at night. And it's just an awesome experience because most of these individuals can't necessarily afford the treatment that they're getting. So they'll come in and get emergency treatment done. They'll also get restorative, crown and bridge, anything that we can do that day. Even some will pick. So like when I talk about crown and bridge, we'll pick one person and do their full entire treatment plan, no matter what it is, fully covered, which has been an awesome experience because that patient then just like, you just see how much they appreciate it and the smile on their face when you're all finished. I distinctly remember this last year we had a full upper that it was a full immediate extract and insert, which we did all in one day. So we had them in the morning, took impressions, did a full upper denture with extractions. The lower, he needed some crown and bridge work done. So we did most of the stuff that day, sent it out and had him back a few weeks later to cement. His whole family ended up coming in and just like saying, thank you so much. You've changed his life. You've done all this. And you get to see the confidence level that it boosted this individual. So it's definitely, that's one of my favorite days of the year. It's a stressful day because it's a lot of patients that we see, but it's definitely one of the most rewarding for sure.
Awesome. I want to take a moment here and introduce a new panelist. Some of you may know Dr. Zarna Patel from NYU. She graduated in 2019, I believe, right?
Yeah,
Dr.
2019.
Patel? Dr. Patel, how has your experience been with giving back and community outreach?
It's been pretty good. I mean, kind of the same thing. We did not necessarily the healthy mobile meal, but we definitely had the patient that came in, and every so often we have to do the one patient for the service event. However, every so often you get a couple of them, and you just you're going to end up doing that free treatment for a couple more of them, and especially when they're veterans, it's tough to just pick the one or two. So I know in our office we try really hard to help as many as possible there. I haven't been on outreach, outside of the country, which I really was hoping to do, but COVID and everything. But that's definitely on my goal list for something I want to do. Part of Aspen, I know they do a ton of outreaches in other countries. There's a ton of doctors who are great at it, and they lead these great events. So it's definitely on my to-do list for sure.
Yeah, I think one of the unique and cool things about Aspen Dental is that we have tons of opportunity for people with DMDs and DDSs, not just utilizing your own hands. Path to ownership is one of them, but there's tons of others. Like there's mentor positions. There's positions that they partner with learning and development and utilize their expertise to help develop that. So that's one thing that is really fantastic about the career path here at Aspen Dental. Dr. Patel, why don't you tell everybody where you practice currently?
I'm actually in Lebanon, Pennsylvania, so it's like central PA in the middle of nowhere kind of. But I'm only like 2 hours from Philly, so fairly decently close to a city, and maybe I'd say 3 hours from New York City, so not too far.
All right. And how's that going?
Not bad. I mean, I'm actually in transition right now. I'm looking to move up north a little bit closer. I had a pretty good mentorship experience while I was here. I'm just ready to kind of move on to a different scene. I didn't think I got exactly the right fit per se when I came to this office. I thought everything clicked and everything would be good for us, but then we kind of bumped heads on a couple things. So I mean Jeff did a great job actually helping me with my transition, and so I'm actually transitioning within the company to a different office a little bit up north with an owner that I think we're going to get along a little bit, or at least see eye to eye a little bit more. And the nice thing about Aspen is they're really going to work with you. If there's something that doesn't work for you, and even my own doctor that I work for, my owner is doing everything in his power to make sure this transition goes smoothly for me. And so soon I'm going to be up in Vermont actually, so that's going to be where I'm starting in a couple months.
I think that speaks volumes of an organization and the mobility that you have, and the support that you have. And that leads me to two questions. Doc, just in a few words, what made you choose to be an owner at Aspen Dental? Like, what was it that made you, not just start your career here, so to speak, but to go ahead and buy in and make this your career?
I would say honestly the camaraderie and the family atmosphere. Everyone that I met when I initially interviewed, I just clicked with, I got along with. It's like I said, it was like the grown-up version of Aspen, or excuse me, of ASDA. And so it was really neat. That I think I definitely was put with the right mentors. I had an amazing experience, and the mentors that I got to learn from are some of the most successful owners in the entire company. One of which owns 5, soon to be, who knows how many, and the other one is working on his 20th practice. So they're great guys to learn from, and these guys, honestly, I couldn't have asked for better mentorship. But the neatest thing about it is like I said, the family atmosphere. I can call up any owner from across the United States, any one of them, and I feel comfortable saying, hey, I've got this issue in my office. Do you mind offering like advice on what you would do with this? And any one of them would be like, oh, yeah, give me a sec. Oh, yeah, I would do X, Y, and Z. This is what if I've come across this. Or, oh, I don't know a lot about this, but let me get you in touch with someone that might. That was something to me that I loved, the fact that it was really easy to communicate with other dentists from across the country and also be a part of something bigger than myself, rather than just having, putting up my shingle and Dr. Meckleberg dentistry, instead being able to be a part of something much bigger and also be a part of this family.
And there was a question that came in, and it was asking specifically about a state, like what do you make it and things of that nature. And, I told that person that they can, inbox me personally and we'll put them in touch with them. But I think there's a good story coming out of North Carolina too. There's one of our, dentists that actually was a partner in Florida, made the move to North Carolina to open up her very own practices in North Carolina. And that speaks, even more to Dr. Patel's story and yours, Dr. Meckleberg's, of, the opportunity for growth within the organization. Dr. Meckleberg and Dr. Patel, we're going to switch gears here a little bit. They really want to know, there's 2 questions with regards to how COVID-19 has affected how you're treating patients currently. So, I think that they're asking about, what precautions are you taking, and how has it really affected your daily business?
Doc, you want to take that one first?
I can take that one. So at least in Pennsylvania, I know everything depended on the state. So depending on what state and the strict guidelines, we were really good about trying to follow the Pennsylvania state guidelines, but also keep CDC, at hand. And pretty much when we first kind of rolled in, it was very much emergency cases only. And then as we were able to kind of fill the schedule and the guidelines got a little bit more lax, we just still make sure, I have my N95 on at all times. When we're seeing patients, we still in my office, we avoid aerosol procedures, avoiding surgical extractions, that sort of thing. Doing our best, especially being in the tri-state area, and I'm sure for you now in Florida there too, it's pretty tough because people here are taking it very seriously, and still we do COVID screening calls a week before the appointment, the day before the appointment, the day they come in, if they have a temperature. And at the end of the day, we make the final call. So I'll have a patient come in with 100 temperature, and I make the call that, I don't think it's a good idea to see this patient. Maybe they should take a couple days, go to their PCP. And so you do have, the authority to make those calls. It's not like Aspen's going to force it on you that you have to see all these patients and that sort of thing. But they're letting, the owners and then the doctors really make the right decisions based off of what the CDC guidelines are. There's no set in stone. There's a couple of things that we have to, follow guidelines for, but everything else, we get a little bit more leeway.
Great. Dr. Meckleberg?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. I think just taking extra precaution. We're in a field already with dentistry where everything is super, super sterile. And just taking that next step and really who comes into the office, having people that come into the office, we require face masks for anybody that comes in the office per state mandate. Florida's been kind of all over the place. I know if you go across the border just north of us in Georgia, it's very different with what their state mandates are. But we strictly adhere to whatever the state is telling us, and the ADA and the CDC. We contact patients well beforehand. Like you had said, Doc, I think that's a great plan. We do that. We do a screening when they come in. They fill out forms, just constantly sanitizing, doing everything that we can, more than anything, to make the patients feel comfortable. And we want the patients to know when they come in here, they're in an environment where they're going to be safe. I think that's something that's been very unique, because in regards to demand and how many patients we've had, the offices are actually busier now than I think they've ever been. And the reason being for that, not necessarily in how many people are in the office at the same time, we have to manage that, but in how many people are trying to get in. The reason being is because of the fact that there are so many other dental practices that have not just closed temporarily, but many have closed permanently. A lot of private practices, especially in this area, I've been getting information from patients, from other docs saying, hey, I got X, Y, and Z patient, we're not open, can you see them? And I think that's something that's a credit to Aspen and how these offices, we worked to stay open through this pandemic. We worked with our risk management team and our HR team and all these different things to allow us to keep our teams in place. In fact, my office is actually never closed. We stayed open throughout the entire thing. We went to emergency procedures only and followed strict state guidelines. So we were still able to see the patients that really needed it. Because there were quite a few, and they didn't have access to care anywhere. Hospitals couldn't help them for certain situations. Dentists were closed, the majority around town. So just staying open and helping those patients, I think it goes a long way. And continuing to do that, I think that's what's going to allow us to build our name in the communities and be known as a place where if you need help, you can come to.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts on that too. Look, I was furloughed for 3.5 months. I think Aspen Dental Management teamed up with the clinicians and did a fantastic job making decisions for the organization. And at the other end of it, allowed almost every single office to open back up safely. And we have not really had a huge hit as a result. And that is a credit to Aspen Dental Management and the decision making that they did to help the doctors stay open, to help those patients that Dr. Meckleberg is talking about get the care that they need. You know, another thing that really helps is our relationships with our suppliers. I believe it's mandated that we have 30 days worth of protective gear on hand at every office at any given time, which is fantastic, because a lot, like to Dr. Meckleberg's point, a lot of offices can't get the protective gear that they need. So, you know, I'm grateful for some of the decisions that went on, and I know that the doctors are too. So that's great. So a couple questions with regard to, well, let's hit this one. So I heard Aspen's more of a denture mill than anything else. What are your thoughts on that? Dr. Meckleberg, why don't you take that one first?
Do we do a lot of pros? Yes. Yes, we do. Is pros a lot different, removable pros a lot different when you get out of school? Oh boy. When I was in school, I despised dentures and removable pros, and that was my least favorite thing. I was like, I will never do this when I get out. I'm doing strictly crown, bridge, and restorative. That's it. And then, sure enough, when you get out in the real world and you have an actual lab in-house with technicians that are specialists at what they do, all the stuff that we hated doing in school, we don't do anymore. You learn techniques and a lot I learned from my mentors and from other doctors and clinicians, and even from my technicians, I've learned a lot. But the process is so much different than what we were taught in school. So much. A denture can be made in a day. And realistically, all we're doing, so I'll walk you through a very short, brief kind of overview of what a denture looks like and how it's made in office. Brief. The patient comes in, say they're a dentalist. We're going to have alginate impressions taken. Assistants are taking the alginate impressions. Got those. Boom. Get them back to the lab. Next time, patient comes in, we're doing bite blocks. The lab made the bite blocks, not us. So we're taking the bite. We're gathering a bite, marking the midline, marking the canines, marking the smile line, all those details. We send that back to the lab. Boom. A little bit later that afternoon, they have a wax try ready. So they have the teeth in, they've already selected the shade, the color, the size, all the different things. So essentially, we try in the teeth, make sure the patient likes it, and then finally they process it. All of that is done in the lab. So we don't do all those steps that were so painstakingly, we're sitting at the chair adjusting one tooth to get it into occlusion, you know, those practicals were the most miserable things in the world. We don't do that. And yes, do we do a ton of dentures? 100%. Our patient population, most of them haven't come to the dentist in 10, 15 years. So a lot of them are going to be denture cases. But the other side of that is that a lot of them are also surgery cases. So as much as some individuals don't really care for pros much, which I was one of those, accompanying those is also the surgery portion. So if you like OS and you like doing surgery, you like placing implants, you like all of that realm, that goes hand in hand with it. So the neatest experience you can have is when you get a patient that comes in and their mouth is bombed out, and you can say, when you leave today, at the end of the day, you will have a completely new smile. That is powerful to a patient, to be able to say that, especially one that's never had confidence in their smile for the last 20 years. And so do we do a lot of dentures? Yeah. But on the flip side of that, I also think that it's a great opportunity, and it's something that I think is overlooked in a lot of ways in other practices where it's an opportunity to help patients.
Awesome. Dr. Patel, anything to add there?
I think Doc covered it pretty well. I was just gonna say, like, definitely, I was the same way. I hated pros so much, and I actually saw it as a challenge. I was like, okay, well, they do a lot of dentures. Let's do this thing because I suck at this. So let me get better. But there's no like green stick border molding, none of that, nonsense. And it's so easy the way that Aspen sets it out. And I love my lab tech. She's amazing. We did like 100 dentures last month. She's so good. And she's just clinically kind of there too. So sometimes I learn things from the denture from her and in the lab where I can improve myself as a clinician, which is amazing because I learned so many new things that I didn't even learn in dental school just from the lab tech, which normally you would never be able to have a conversation with your techs because you're sending out your denture impressions, getting them back in 2 weeks. The other thing is for RPDs, I'm sure you do this too, Doc, but we scan everything on iTero now. So our assistants take the impressions, they iTero scan, and then, your framework comes in. Sometimes, you get the whole RPD out all at once. You don't even have to do that much work for it. So it's so much easier, I think, in the real world and the way that Aspen does it than I would have expected. And that was definitely a blessing.
That's great. Doc, it leads into the next question is, talk about the technology in the offices. Is it lagging behind? Is it state of the art or somewhere in between?
Am I taking this?
Go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. The iTero, I kind of a surprise for that. In dental school, we did use Surek, and so we were kind of used to the scanning system. But we do iTero scans here in the office, and the cool thing is we actually do the iTero scans for every patient. Every new patient gets an iTero scan, and it's a game changer when it comes to showing treatment plan because sometimes you can show the patient the x-ray, you can show them their cavities, they have no idea what you're talking about. They don't even know what a dot on an x-ray means. But when you show them their iTero scan and they can actually see the decay or see the darkened circles, see erosion or abfraction, you can explain the treatment plan, you get much better treatment acceptance. And then the cool thing about the iTero is that because it's hand in hand with their Invisalign, we can actually show them what their Invisalign outcome would be. So it helps with that as well. And so the iTero, it's great. It helps us with a lot of our scanning when it comes to treatment plan acceptance, when it comes to Invisalign, RPDs, crowns, and everything gets scanned. So we don't have to worry about that. And when it comes to scanning, like my assistants are so good at it, I don't even scan anything anymore. They do everything for me. So, that's the best part. The technology is there and the hands are there on deck. So it makes our life as a doctor much easier for sure.
Dave, thank you. That was awesome. Another question, Dr. Meckleberg, is asking about implants. What system do you use and cone beams?
Yeah, so in each of my practices, I had a CBCT installed, so it just makes it that much easier to do everything in office. We don't have to send out. We use the Nobel Active. I actually am a big fan of the guided. It makes life so much easier. Now, do I freehand some cases? Yes. Immediate cases, if you got a patient that comes in and they need a denture that day and they want 2 implants placed right in the front, sure, we'll go for it. We'll place it. We don't need a stent for that. But we'll grab a CBCT scan. We can see exactly what the bone looks like. We can plot and plan what size implant we want to do and then go from there. But the nice part is the system that we use now, it's called Swiss Media. The term for it is SMOP. We partnered with that company, and essentially that has allowed us to really, we reach out. We have a leader, Dr. Rawal, who is an implant specialist in Central Florida. He works with the entire company and does trainings in it. And all of our cases that we plan, we send to him, he kind of has an overview of it, says, let's move it a little this way, that way, goes through it individually with each doctor. So that way they feel confident in it. And then from there, we end up treatment planning the case, getting the stent in, placing the implants. And I tell you, from the first time I placed an implant, freehand, to now being able to do it with a stent, it goes from an 1.5 hour to 2 hour procedure to all of a sudden you can have a patient in and out the door in 30 minutes. It's incredible with the stents and the new technology with just getting an iTero scan and a CBCT that we send out.
Awesome. So now they're asking about a loan repayment plan. And, you know, I'll take this one. So listen, Aspen Dental, like Dr. Meckleberg talked about it earlier, the dentists own the practices. And, you know, while we don't have contracts or terms, you know, when we don't have a restricted covenant, the dentist that you work for is the one that pays your benefits, your compensation, etc. And when it comes to student loan, they're the ones that hand those out as well. So Aspen Dental Management's job is to provide, you know, different plans for that, for execution. But for the most part, the dentists that own the offices pay those. So those really are office by office, region by region, etc. And there's a ton of different ways we could do it. But I just typed in my contact information. If anybody on this call is looking specifically for a loan repayment program, it's going to be in specific offices, and we can talk about that offline. I don't imagine that, you know, Dr. Meckleberg, have you ever participated in a student loan program?
No, and that's one thing I did want to say is every owner is going to be much different. Every office you go into has its own flair, has its own culture, has its own style. And like Doc was talking about, she may get along not as well with one owner as she would a different owner. And that's why I always encourage everybody to find the right fit. Because when you find the right fit and you find somebody that you get along with super well, it's fun. Your days are, it just makes them enjoyable to work hand in hand with somebody that you get along with. Along with that as well, I did want to say compensation in every office is very different. Daily rates are different everywhere, but I will tell you this, the daily rate in the long term means very little. Because like for instance, in my offices, never once in one of my offices has the daily rate been what my doctors have made. My doctors make their percentage of the revenue in the office, and ever since I've owned the offices, they've never made less than what, or I should say, they've never made their daily rate. They've always been well over it. So if that kind of gives you a ballpark of where they've been, and to put it in perspective, the national averages are the national averages. So if your offices are extremely successful, what your doctors are going to be compensated, or what, say you're coming out as an associate or an MCD and jumping into a practice, if your office is doing well, you're going to be well above the national average, as my associate is well above the national average right now.
Awesome. All right, so I have a really fun question to ask that was asked. Who is the CEO of Aspen Dental Management? I'll take that, and then I'll let you guys comment on that. The CEO of Aspen Dental Management is the original founder, president, and CEO of Aspen Dental. His name is Bob Fontana, and he is still very, very active. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to let Dr. Meckleberg and then Dr. Patel talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, Bob is awesome. One of the neatest things about Aspen is that from the top, literally Bob, all the way down, you can reach out to anybody, and it doesn't matter who it is. They're gonna treat you as if, you know, you're a friend in the room with them. Like they don't see anybody as anything different. So if I have an issue, I could call up or text Bob tomorrow, and he would send me a text right back saying, hey, what can I help you with? What do you need? That's the family atmosphere and the camaraderie that I talked about, that people care. And Bob's one that cares about this company. Initially, early on, I will never forget in Milwaukee, I'm sure Jeff remembers this, he actually came to present to a small group of us students with Jeff, and I was drilling him. I didn't even, at the time, he was like, oh, this is like, CEO, blah, blah, blah. And I was thinking like, oh, okay, yeah, well, I'm going to ask a million hard questions. And everything he gave back to me, I was like, wow, this guy's good. He knows his stuff. All right. Like, just super impressed. And
You know what I remember most
it's
about
been
that
awesome.
night, Dr. Meckleberg?
What's that?
Was that so all of the senior leadership was kind of working the room great that night. And they addressed so many questions. So by the time Bob got in there and asked for questions, there was no more questions left. And Dr. Meckleberg was the only person in the room that asked a question while he was on the microphone. And I went to my buddy Justin and I go, see, I told you he's the man. He was the only question. He was the only person to ask a question at that particular event. Because, like I said, most of them were answered before. How about you, Dr. Patel? Do you have any stories about meeting the senior management or Bob?
Yeah, so my story, the first time I met Bob, I was actually a student and I went to one of the events that Aspen was holding, and this was back in Chicago, and Danica Patrick was doing her races and Aspen was sponsoring her.
Book bag.
Oh my God, okay, yeah, that's a whole other story. Jeff lost my backpack. As a student with my laptop and I had a final the next day, it was awful. And I'm still with Aspen somehow. But yeah, so I actually met Bob because me and my friends, we were goo-goo gagaing over at Danica Patrick. We wanted to talk to her and we didn't know how to do it. And Bob actually saw us and was like, let me help these poor souls out. And he came to us, took all of us, and he was like, introduced us to Danica Patrick. And that was the first time I ever met Bob. But the crazy thing is Bob knows so many people, right? And he somehow remembered me. And so I would go to all these events. He would still remember me. And it was so weird. And then the next time I saw him was at my lift training. And I was a doctor. And every time I see him the next time, he's like, all right, what are you up to now? Are you MCD yet? Are you an owner yet? What's going on? And it's so cool. I mean, he's such a cool guy. And he's so down to earth. He'll come out with you to get drinks and stuff. Like, he's not a behind the desk type of CEO for sure. He's very approachable, very fun person to be around and talk to and, have a conversation with.
Totally hands-on, and it was a small organization that grew and grew and grew. And just, we're kind of wrapping up here, and I got a couple raffles to do, but we do everything we can to continue to strive for that small family feel, even though there's 14,000 Aspen Dental members now across the nation. And we're opening up 60 some odd or 80 offices a year, 80 to 100 offices a year still. We're still hiring and we're still doing well. So, I want to take a moment to thank everybody. It's almost 8 o'clock and I want to wrap up, but special thanks to Dr. Meckleberg and even more special thanks to Dr. Patel jumping on the last second. We really, really appreciate it. And I wanted to let everybody know, we talked about CE a little bit earlier. Aspen Dental actually has a program where not only our own dentists get free CE, but up until at least the end of the year, every dental field clinician has the ability to log on and get free CE through Aspen Dental, unlimited. So it's aspendentalce.com, and I'll put that in an email as I thank everybody via email tonight or tomorrow. But feel free to log on and get some free CE as well. So I randomly chose a couple winners for the Amazon gift cards. And the first winner of $25 Amazon gift card is Melissa Wong. So Melissa, I will be sending you to your email that you registered with a $25 Amazon gift card. Congratulations. Round of applause, everybody. I hear you all, I promise. And the grand prize winner of $75 Amazon gift card goes to Monica Pagoda. So Dr. Pagoda, there'll be a gift card coming to your inbox as well. Listen, I'll stay on as long as the last attendee is on. But again, I want to thank, NYU student government for helping putting this together. I really appreciate it. Dr. Patel jumping on the last second. That's awesome. Dr. Meckleberg, as always, well done. Thank you all very, very much. Speakers are dismissed unless you want to stick on, but I haven't had any questions in the last 5 minutes. So thank you very much. We are over and out. Good night.
Take care, man. Thanks.
Bye, Dr. Patel.
Bye. People still here? Is everyone logging off?
They're logging off, yeah.
Oh, I see some of the familiar NYU faces or names on here.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Nice. Love it.
Well, it was a good meeting. It was very well attended. So nice job. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.